Hello, beautiful souls. How are you today? It's August 23rd, 2023. I am going to bring you a rather different message today. And I am, it's kind of like a take two. When I first started doing um, YouTube stuff last year, I was asked to partner to do a medical show on like medical betrayal with someone who turned out to not have such a great soul. So I removed that video from my channel on my side because I wasn't 100% certain that any messages delivered by that other individual were safe sounding accurate. So I'd rather not be have any of that gray area um, on my videos on my channel. So where I can control things, I do. Now, I have been transparent throughout my entire, well, really throughout my entire life, but certainly since I started my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel was started not because Nicole wanted to start a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel was started because I had this booming voice in my head saying, start a YouTube channel, start a YouTube channel, start a YouTube channel, which I ignored heavily for months. And it kept getting louder and more frequent. And finally, I said, why on earth would I do that? And the next message was biblical truth. Now, that's how I started my YouTube channel, was to spread biblical truth, things that I found in the course of my own research and my own journey, my own spiritual journey, that really was eye-opening and an aha moment for me. And so I chose to share it, whomever wanted to watch. Mostly 99.9% has received all of my information very well. And I thank every single one of you, especially all my subscribers. Thank you so much. Now, my background before I really dove headfirst into this spiritual journey and my faith journey and really becoming an energy worker is medical, straight up. I felt called to the medical field when I was in high school. I did not have any opportunity to go to college traditionally. So I joined the Army, active duty, and I was a medic, active duty medic in a hospital stateside for 4 years. And then in the reserves for another couple of years, I worked as a civilian in the hospital. And then once I was completely detached from the military, I got my certified nursing assistant certificate because I couldn't function in the civilian sector with all of my vast experience without a little piece of paper. Thank you, bureaucracy. And so then I started working in civilian hospitals, right? And so my calling never faded. It was always to be in acute care, in the front lines, helping people as much as I could to the best of my ability. And in 2004, I graduated from nursing school, from registered nursing school. And I already had a great amount of experience, right? So I was able to go directly into very high level critical care environments and really was with great company, you know, and people really was very accepting of the fact that I wasn't like a newbie out of nursing school. I had some knowledge. I had done some things already. I was really comfortable talking to the patients and touching the patients and great at starting IVs and all this kind of stuff, right? And so I was able to really do whatever it is I wanted to do. So for 20 years, I traversed this country, West Coast to East Coast, because I would be staff for a while, and then inevitably the culture would change somewhere. The hospital would get sold, or whatever the case may be. Things were not as copacetic as they were when I started. And so I took my talents on the road and went traveling, and then I found other places that were great, and I'd stay there for a while, and then their culture would change, and then I'd go back to traveling. And so I did not have a one horse town kind of experience. I experienced healthcare from big level 1 trauma centers all the way down to small community hospitals with 6 ER rooms, you know, so any and everything in between. I was always emergency room and critical care and supervisor. So I say all that to say the topic that I'm going to speak on today is absolutely 100% my opinion, but based on my experience, I feel like I have a very good understanding because I was in it neck deep. And the information that I now know has been solidified. It's solidified my intuition that I had a couple years ago. And so, as always, I am called to share, to help, and not harm. And so I am presenting what I know. Because if it keeps someone from being taken advantage of, or being naive, or being too trusting, or being manipulated and harmed as a result, that is my goal. I do not offer advice as a medical professional because I gave up my license. I am a straight up child of God, source creator, Mother Sophia, given divine abilities now, and it is that which I use to help people, and it is that realm which I choose to help people from. So take this if it resonates. It's just information. It is not meant to sway you one way or the other. I am just sharing my story. It is the information based on what I know to be true because I experienced it. It is absolutely my truth. No one can tell me it didn't happen to me. I was there. So, trigger warning, if you're in healthcare and you haven't woken up yet, this might bother you. If you have been harmed because of healthcare, this will trigger you. And I am very empathetic to that because I too have been there. But knowledge is power, and with knowledge can come great things. Ignorance and walking around with blinders on just means you're going to walk into the wall repeatedly. So I had such a great experience as a nurse most of the time. But I will say that by and large, the healthcare system has been broken long before spring of 2020. And I say that because I want you to understand that it was not this well-oiled machine that only worked in the greater good of the clients, the patients, and the family members, or the staff for a very long time, if ever. My experience for a chronological time clock for you really began in 1991, whenever I went in the military. And I walked away from nursing and all things Western healthcare in 2022. So that is the span of time that I'm speaking from. I learned a lot of what to do, and I learned even more of what not to do. There are places that have exceptional employees, great doctors, amazing nurses, tech, housekeeping. However, some of those places that have amazing souls working for them are completely managed from a corporate, profit-driven, service to self mentality. And it trickles through, and it is woven into the fabric of Western healthcare. So I am not attacking the healthcare workers because that is me, like that was me. I am not. This is not an attack of any kind, really. This is a disclosure of what truly gets said, what truly gets debated about in the context of healthcare. And so we are now at a point in our culture, in our world, that something has been created to cause fear and enable control. And that is the gist of it. There's a whole lot of other details about all of that I'm not going to go into, but I'm going to give you some very specific examples, and you can draw your conclusions from there on what you think the motivation is. So, and I've been, like I said, I've been there. And so now, knowing what I know I too was a victim of this machine called Western healthcare and pharmaceutical industry. So in 2005, I had been an RN for 1 year, but because of my experience, I was elevated into positions that other 1 year experienced RNs probably would not have been at that time. So I transferred out of a surgical intensive care unit and then into an ER. And within a few months of being in that ER in South Louisiana, Hurricane Katrina hit. We were a 10-bed emergency room and had a bigger emergency room in construction, but we weren't in it yet. We were on the evacuation route along I-10 in South Louisiana. And so when everyone was trying to leave and stuck in traffic for days, they saw that blue hospital sign. They just took that exit looking for hope and a prayer, someone to help them. And that was us. That's who they encountered the first time. So 5 days and 5 nights, no power, horrible conditions, and ambulances and helicopters from all over the country bringing us patients because they had no communication, no ability to let us know what they were bringing or to know that we can take care of them. So 1 year in as an RN, and that was trial by fire, right? So then later on that month, we had Rita. Again, 2 weeks, no power, lots of devastation, lots of flooding, lots of trees down, lots of deaths. Then a couple years go by, still in the same ER. Then we got Gustav. Again, 5 days, 5 nights living in the ER. No power, difficulty getting gas, difficulty getting food. That's when I was like, shortly after that, I think it was the following year, I said some personal things that happened, and I'm like, well, time to take this show on the road. That's when I went traveling, and I went to California. So I went to California thinking I was going to see like the best of the best, right? Everything great happens out west. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot. And a lot of what I learned is things that should never be done, ever. So, for example, this was in 2009, a perfectly well-deserving community had approved, planned, and constructed a brand new emergency room for a local community hospital that had outgrown their current facility. And because of politics and bureaucracy, the completely finished, perfectly usable space that is a emergency room, I think it was over 20 beds, had a 24/7 security guard out front preventing anyone from entering because they had not gotten an occupancy permit from the state due to political differences and bureaucracy. The state couldn't agree with the county, and it was affecting that community horribly. We were actually treating people in tents in the parking lot with a perfectly good inhabitable space over politics. So I have seen a lot, okay, in other places because of the corporate greed They are very, very lacking of proper supplies. So a huge issue is patient falls. Everyone is aware of this. So I'm in an emergency room. It's extremely busy. There's, you know, a 5-6 hour wait patients in the lobby. There's no urinals to give grown men to empty their bladder while they are unable to get up off a stretcher. No urinals in the entire ER, in the facility, as a matter of fact. I asked what was I supposed to give them to prevent them from falling and climbing out of bed, because a grown man is not going to just sit there and pee on themselves, okay, unless they're demented. It's not going to happen. They gave me a styrofoam coffee cup and tell them to pinch it off frequently so you can keep emptying it. So, this one example. You learn to adapt, because not every place you go into, especially as a traveler, you go into places that are mismanaged or misstaffed or both, right? They can't hold on to their staff, or they can't hold on to their management, or they can't hold on to both. And so that's where you never go into an ideal situation as a traveler. And you understand that that's why the pay is what it is, because most people have to get paid to put their license on the line, which is exactly the facility. Because when said patient climbs over the rail and falls out the bed and breaks the hip that they weren't in the ER for, because you didn't have a urinal for them, it's not going to be the hospital that says, yeah, that was our mistake. It's going to be the nurse that they blame it on. So everything gets charted, everything gets reported, and nothing changes. So these instances over time really, as well as the general environment of the ER, really started to make me question my life choices, right? Still in the gut of me, in the soul of me, felt called to be a healer, but there were so few and far between of instances where I felt like I could actually help someone, because the system was developed in such a way that I just was always found myself apologizing for other people's behavior. And it wasn't a behavior that was going to stop. It wasn't one-offs. It was the way the system works. And so I'm saying all of this to say that it was not good long before March of 2020. But when that occurred, it became a whole nother level of fuckery. So for years, the nursing profession was held in high regard, one of the most moral and trusted professions, poll after poll after poll. All of a sudden, we went from being healthcare heroes to the enemy. And I completely understand why. I completely understand why now. So I was supervising in a hospital whenever March 2020 rolled around. And they cut that position because they had to shut down their operating room schedule because of the restrictions that had been placed. That cut their revenue. So they started cutting people off of their budget, off their payroll. So I took a travel position in a different town, in a different hospital where there were several critical care units, and I was a critical care float. And so I had always been able to bebop between ER and critical care because of my experience. I stayed pretty fluent and pretty current. I always would pick up extra in whichever department I wasn't currently working in so that my skills stayed up to speed. I had never been told you need to have dialysis certification to work critical care. Now, in all the years that I worked critical care, when someone needed emergency dialysis, the dialysis nurse on call would come in and do bedside dialysis. It's called CRRT. And they would work independently of the assigned nurse for that patient. there was communication, but they did not work together. They did not collaborate. It was not anything that we assisted each other on. It was completely different roles, and it was not morphed into one. All of a sudden, that became an issue. Like, well, you need to be able to do bedside dialysis, which I said, since when? Since when? Well, this was very early on, but remdesivir was being used already. And I learned very, very quickly that patients would come in, they would get the cocktails, which was mostly multivitamins and over-the-counter vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, melatonin, aspirin. But then they'd get remdesivir, and it would shut their kidneys down, and they end up on emergency dialysis, and they end up throwing big clots, and they passed away about 3 to 5 weeks into it. Some less, some more. This is an average. So it was terrifying to be in an environment where that was a very realistic outcome for my patient. Then let's just double down on the stress. Supplies. Signing out an N95 to you and telling you to use it your entire 12 hours, one mask, your entire 12 hours. Getting a gown and told this is the only gown you're going to be able to use for the entire shift for this room. Getting, and having to wear more than one because we didn't have a whole lot of faith, because as we're putting them on, they're falling apart. So we're putting on two because we're hoping that one was better made than the other one. All made from our friends overseas. Now, these are pieces that I was noticing randomly, but I was so engrossed in answering the call and being part of the solution and not part of the problem. I was being, as much as I could be, a dutiful servant for the greater good. Now, so much happened in such a small period of time in the facilities. Every day we came in, there were these big sweeping changes, because it was as if, from my perspective, they were making this up as we went along, because it had never been seen before and it had never been experienced, before. Everything that we were doing that had always worked for people with these same symptoms was making them worse. And so within short order, we found that we're having to 6, 7 people on a floor, which is pretty much everybody, is having to gather at the bedside and completely prone an adult patient that is on a ventilator. And it takes a lot of people and a lot of coordination. And so, and because they were drowning in the fluids in the bases of their lungs on their back, so we'd flip them forward and they could drain, and they would drain a shit ton. And it looked black and gray, and it was disgusting. But then they'd be on their stomachs for 18 hours, and we'd flip them back up for 6, take another x-ray, see how they looked, and then if they needed it, we'd flip them again for another 18 hours. And all the while, they are on massive amounts of drugs to keep them completely still, or they were paralyzed. And the rooms were outfitted to have positive pressure ventilation, and so there was air conditioning really wasn't an option, because everything got ventilated out to the outside. And so you basically had these rooms with these sick people with high fevers and miserable, and tons of pillows and tons of padding and tons of support and all this stuff with no air conditioning. And we're we're in our scrubs, we're in our gowns, we're in our masks, we're shielded, we're all this stuff. So we're dripping wet with sweat for 12 hours, and we're supposed to use that same gown and that same mask for 12 hours. And this was not a one facility issue. This was every facility was doing this. So I finish that contract, I leave that one place, I ended up in a different state, different contract. And I get to the unit and we're getting our assignment and there's no gowns. And I'm like, where are the gowns? Like, we can't work this ICU with no gown. And I got handed a gallon-sized Ziploc bag that had 12 trash bags in it, rolled up super tight. And I said, what's this? It's your gowns. These are trash bags. Oh, you can't say trash bags. Why not? They're trash bags. There were trash bags that people had, the good folks of the local churches had cut a hole in the top, or it was actually in the bottom. They cut a hole for the neck. Then they hot pressed a sleeve like this big, like my arm couldn't even go into it. And then they cut a slit up the back. So you were supposed to put this trash bag on and put your arms in the sleeve. And that was 12 of them. So that one dinky trash bag was supposed to protect you and last an hour because you worked 12-hour shifts for both rooms that you were assigned, or 3 rooms that you were assigned. And I said, this is ridiculous. This is not protection. This is sacrificing your staff over lack of supplies. I want to talk to the supervisor. Supervisor comes and brings me a hospital OR gown and says, this is the only one you're going to get. Make sure you take care of it. So there was this punitive environment over asking for proper PPE. At the same time, PPE was required or else you couldn't come to work. So we're going to demand that you wear a mask 24/7 while you're here in the facility. We're going to demand that you use eye protection. We're going to demand that you wear gowns. But when we run out of them, we're going to give you trash bags and call them gowns. And it's going to be the same one-to-one comparison. So infection prevention is this title that people get. They're supposed to handle all the communicable diseases and all the things that people get exposed to and make sure that there's no big outbreaks in the facilities and blah, blah, blah. Well, these people were completely bowled over by all these processes. They, first of all, had no, I guess they weren't in on all the inside memos that were going around, like whenever the patents for the testing, PCR test was in 2015, they weren't included in it. So they were struggling to keep up, and they were doing a really, really poor job of it. By and large, every facility, very poor job of it. They didn't have enough of these mandated testing supplies. And so whenever they ran out logistically, again, a PPE problem or a supply problem caused everything else to stop. Everything stopped. You couldn't just look at the patient and say, I don't believe this is what's going on. I believe it's blah, 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 and that they would be fine to be admitted, even if, 24 hours to see which direction this goes, they'd be under the care. It had to be the super cold or nothing. Like you couldn't possibly have strep throat without having the super cold. And if you had the super cold, they didn't give you the treatment for strep throat. So people had true infections that would have responded well to antibiotics, that were not treated properly because of the super cold, which had no treatment, and the things that they gave you for it freaking tried to kill you. So I kept seeing this play out. And at a certain point, I was like, I think this is all a part of a huge assault on the population of the planet. I remember when I had that realization. And it hit me because I had gotten some information about remdesivir and all of the things that they knew well in advance from the research that it would do to a human body when given in the amounts and the frequency that it was required to be given in. And I knew that they knew that it was to kill people. And they did it anyway. So now I'm layering all this stuff that I'm experiencing. So now I'm layering this experimental drug that they could only use under an emergency authorization. And this fucked up PPE policies everywhere where there's not even enough PPE to use. And then the PPE we do get is so poorly manufactured that it literally falls apart before you can get it out of the packaging. And I've seen all my coworkers who are putting these dots together and taking a stand and saying, no, this doesn't make any sense. They're just getting fired for non-compliance or whatever they want to call it. So people are losing their careers and their livelihood over some bullshit. Bullshiggity. There's no other way to say it. Yes. Were people getting sick? Yes. Were they dying? Yes. Was it horrific? Yes. It was made to be worse in many, many ways by all of the federal mandates that came out. So, vaccine. I was in the military. I got vaccinated for all sorts of stuff that I was never exposed to because I didn't know whether I'd be deployed or not. You know, it's just this blanket thing. They shoot a gun full of a bunch of vaccines, and most people pass out because it's such a huge. And that was the case as far as I can remember. I think that most people that are in the military don't realize that we are the guinea pigs of the federal government because they can try anything they want on us because we are property of the U.S. Scary as it is. Now, I was not up to speed on all the different things that get put in to the process of making these shots. I became acutely aware when I was figuring out what kind of vortex of hell I had found myself. And I felt in my gut, this was not the thing to do. This was not the thing to do. This came about completely wrong. It was untrustworthy. In my being, I knew. Now, I was absolutely, like everyone else, pressured to be given the 1 and the 2 at a minimum to keep my job. So to maintain my function as a provider of my income, I was sole provider. I had to agree and comply with wearing a mask from the time I hit the door into the building to the time I left the building. All the time. I have a permanent skin condition on the bridge of my nose from wearing the mask for 2.5 years. We also had to do random testing. Even if we had no symptoms, you just got randomly tested like a drug screen. We had to, do the shields and the gowns and keep people apart, and people weren't coming to see the doctor, and family members were kept apart. So you had new patients getting horrible diagnosis for the first time, and they couldn't have their support system with them. Fear of the super cold. So I felt as an empath, I felt all this pain and turmoil, and I was dealing with it on my own. I felt like every time I went to work, there was some more shit that was coming down that would ultimately harm the workers and the patients. And the only people that were profiting off of all this were the policymakers, the pharmaceutical industry, and the suppliers, right? And there was this huge push of people that believed all the shit that would come out. And I wanted to say, did you forget microbiology? Like, did you forget that actually being exposed to things builds your immunity? Did you forget that in our natural ability of our bodies, we produce more antibodies than any vaccine can give us? And yes, they had all forgotten that. They said none of that applied anymore. But you're right, because this shit was manufactured. Now, I'm not gonna go into all the things because it's just me like ranting and nobody wants to really hear that. But I wanted to give you that bit because this is the part that made me want to do this video. Because like I said, I've kind of put bits and pieces of this out before, but then I took the videos down. Anyway, what I really want to say is when the CDC decided that the PCR testing was not going to be the gold standard anymore, I questioned my chain of command because we were still doing them. And that was the only thing that we were allowed to use. And so they provided no answer immediately. And then within some months, they brought in different swabs. Swabs were then the 8-panel viral swabs, which means instead of just the quick test or the PCR test that got set up for just the super cold, these would test for the 8 main known viruses. I'm going to list those because it's important. Influenza, RSV, adenovirus, parainfluenza, coronavirus, which is the cold, rhinovirus, enterovirus, and human metapneumovirus. You can look all these up. Don't be too scared about what you read. My point is, RSV has been around for decades. It is and has always been, in adults, a cold. It looks like a cold. It walks like a cold. It's got the same duration as a cold. It's not a big deal. Most adults don't even notice that they have the symptoms of RSV. RSV is a bigger deal in neonates, newborns, toddlers, and young children because of the inflammation in the airway. Their airways are about the circumference of a pen or a marker. So when they have inflammation and increased mucus production, it clogs up their airways and they choose to not eat or not drink because they're trying to breathe. Breathing is going to always trump eating. So then they get the bronchiolitis, then they get the wheezing, they end up on respiratory treatment, and it is supportive care with humidified oxygen and nebulizer treatments until it passes, because again, it is a virus. Now, I walked through a business the other day because I don't typically watch television, and I saw a commercial with Magic Johnson talking about you might be at risk for RSV if you have high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, congestive heart failure, diabetes. Okay, well, let me just stop right there. I was like, these mofos. RSV's been around for decades. Nobody gave two shits about an adult having RSV ever until the new tests were done. And because of online access to your records, people were like, well, what's this RSV that I have? I don't have all this other stuff, but what's RSV? Is that bad? Because we have this hypervigilance now about anything with a virus. And Big Pharma said, oh, joy, we can make more money. We can promote a vaccine and make people fearful over another freaking virus that's not going to harm them. Toil. So now they are marketing a vaccine for RSV for adults when RSV was never, ever, ever even tested in an adult until this. This is an inconsequential result for an adult. Seriously, there's like 0.1% of the population in an adult population that would have a true medical contraindication to have an RSV. But they can make you fearful now, see, because everybody's super, super scared that they're going to get the thing and then they're going to die. They're so scared that they are blindly following the government, who is full of idiots working for a corporation for profit. They are not in your best interest. They are not for your greatest good. They are not. They are not. They are not. Please, for all that is holy, stop lining up for these shots. They are not going to make you better. They are going to give you things you never even heard of before, and you're going to eventually die from them. That is my humble nurse opinion. It is not going to be something that you find anywhere, because no one's going to have the balls to say it. Maybe RFK Jr., I don't know. He's pretty awesome. But I'm just saying, this has got to stop with the people. The people have to get their head up out the sand and realize, put the pieces together like I did. Now, it was freaking hard. This was my profession. This is all I had ever done. I said, good thing I'm good at this nursing thing, because I think I would suck at anything else. And that's pretty much true. I have always felt like I was a healer. I always wanted to help. When all of this fell in my lap, and I realized in my role, getting my assigned patients, taking care of their medications, giving them what was ordered, scanning them, doing all the things that the government said you have to do to be safe. And I'm giving them medications that are not safe. I'm giving them medications because I believed I was helping. In the end, those medications were not helping anyone except pharmaceutical industry. And the facilities, they were enticed. They were enticed. It is my belief and my opinion that they were enticed to play along with this game because of the monetary compensation that each facility got for each super cold patient, and each super cold patient that needed help breathing got even more. So you think about that. If a facility is going to get paid more for patient A because they have this label and they have this treatment and they have this drug, then patient B, who doesn't have that label and just, is legitimately in their chronic illness state, needs a tune-up, who do you think is going to get fed? And who do you think is going to get sent home? Now, did in that scenario, I've seen it play out multiple times, neither patient gets taken care of. Neither patient gets justly in the spirit of working for the greater good taken care of. It is about profit. It is about profit and control. So as this new wave of bullshit is hitting us, you have to understand now. People are understanding. They're putting the pieces together. This is what I highly, highly, highly recommend you do, and spread the truth. Say no to masks because they do not help. Okay? They don't. Say no to remdesivir. Say no. This is not going to help me. I don't want that. It will not help me. What has actually been proven to help is doxycycline and hydrochloroquine and ivermectin. And vitamin C, vitamin D, sunlight, around. So all the things that they told you not to do. They said, stay inside. What's better for you? Actually being outside. They said, cover your face. What's better for you? Oxygenation, coughing, deep breathing. Can you deep breathe with a mask on? No, you cannot. People that are doing their exercises with masks on are trying to give themselves a horrendous infection. What else did they say? Oh, social distancing. Because people are coughing on their hands and all this kind of stuff, and they've done this forever, ever. They don't cover their mouth when they cough. Well, that's basic just manners, right? That's just general behavior. I'm gonna tell you something. It don't get any better whenever you socially distance and wear a mask. That bad behavior is done, and all of the protections that are put in place fail. So stop. It's better to just wash your hands and cover your face whenever you're coughing and sneezing. Stop saying okay to all this stuff that comes down the pike from the government, like the government hadn't been lying to you forever, because they do, and they are, and they still are doing it. You are greasing the wheels of the profiteers that are making money off of blood, sweat, and tears of the American people. That is my belief. That is my belief. I will go to my grave. But I tell you this, I now have nothing to do with it. And I advocate for everything a person can do in their sovereignty to take care of their own health before it gets to that point, and understanding that there's a whole lot we can do outside of Western medicine to make ourselves feel better. So my reason for making this video today is, number one, I just cannot stomach the idea of another wave of mandates coming out for masking and distancing and shutting things down, and people losing their livelihood over lies, straight up lies. The way to win this battle, because they think they have so much control and upper hand over you, is to say no in the masses. Say absolutely freaking not. This shit didn't work the first time you pulled it over on us, and I'm not falling for it again. I'm going to keep doing me, and I'm going to keep doing my little healthiness all on my own, and you're going to get out of my way, because I have a life to provide for myself outside of your mandate. Now, I understand this is totally controversial. I understand this is probably not what you wanted to hear, but it's the truth. To the best of my ability, it's what I experienced, it's what I've seen, it's what my intuition has told me. Source Creator has confirmed so much of this, and it was done to us intentionally to manipulate, control, power, and profit for the top tier elitist. It is all part of a bigger plan to keep us controlled in a slave mentality as an entire population of people. So please wake up, exert your sovereignty, be the free will soul that Source Creator, mothersophia, put you on this planet to be, and advocate for safety, but realize that those that are telling you the science doesn't lie are the ones creating science that has lied. I hope that you stay well, and I hope that this message has not upset you too badly. It was the truth and it needed to be shared. Have a good day.